It was a chilly October evening when five friends set out on a weekend camping trip. They were all avid hikers and nature enthusiasts, and they had been planning this trip for months. The group consisted of Alex, a seasoned hiker, and the group's leader, Jessica, his adventurous girlfriend, Michael, a nature photographer, Sarah, a thrill seeker, and Mark, the youngest of the group and the most inexperienced when it came to camping. They arrived at the trailer just before sunset, ready to embark on their adventure into the wilderness. The trail was narrow and winding, leading deep into a dense forest. As they hiked further into the woods, the temperature dropped and the atmosphere grew eerier. The trees loomed overhead, casting long shadows in the fading light. The group hiked for several hours, following the trail as it twisted and turned. They laughed and shared stories, but they couldn't shake off the feeling that they were being watched. The woods seemed to close in around them, and the rustling of leaves and snapping of twigs made them jump at every sound. As night fell, they decided to set up camp near a clearing they stumbled upon. They pitched their tents, started a campfire, and sat around, roasting marshmallows and sharing ghost stories. Sarah, always eager for a thrill, suggested they play a game of hide-and-seek in the dark woods. Despite their initial hesitation, the group agreed, and they divided into teams of two. Alex and Jessica paired up, as did Michael and Sarah, leaving Mark to play solo. They set the rules, agreeing not to venture too far from the campsite and to use flashlights to navigate in the darkness. The game began, and the group scattered into the woods, their flashlights piercing through the darkness. It wasn't long before Mark realized he had gotten separated from the others. He tried calling out to them, but his voice seemed to get swallowed by the dense forest. Mark's heart started to race as he wandered deeper into the woods, trying to find his way back to the campsite. He heard rustling in the bushes and saw shadows flitting among the trees, but he couldn't make out who or what it was. He felt a growing sense of unease and tried to retrace his steps, but the woods seemed to have shifted around him, and he couldn't find his way back. Suddenly, Mark heard a faint, eerie melody carried on the wind. It sounded like a lullaby, but it sent shivers down his spine. He followed the sound, hoping it would lead him back to the campsite, but the melody seemed to be leading him deeper into the woods. As Mark stumbled through the underbrush, he caught glimpses of something moving in the shadows. He tried to shine his flashlight on it, but the beam seemed to be swallowed by the darkness. The rustling and the lullaby grew louder, and Mark's fear intensified. He continued to follow the sound, his heart pounding in his chest. He stumbled upon an abandoned cabin, half hidden among the trees. The melody was coming from inside. Mark cautiously approached the cabin, his flashlight flickering in the darkness. Mark peered through the window of the cabin, his heart pounding in his chest. He could see flickering candlelight inside, and the lullaby grew louder. He hesitated for a moment, but his curiosity got the better of him, and he pushed open the creaky door. The cabin was musty and filled with cobwebs. The air was icy, and Mark could see his breath as he stepped further inside. The flickering candlelight cast eerie shadows on the walls, and the lullaby seemed to be coming from a room at the back of the cabin. Mark cautiously made his way towards the room, his flashlight beam flickering in the dim light. As he approached the door, he noticed claw marks on the walls and the floor as if something had been desperately trying to escape. He pushed open the door, and what he saw made his blood run cold. The room was empty, except for a rocking chair swaying back and forth on its own. The lullaby was coming from the chair, but there was no one there. Mark's instincts told him to run, but his curiosity kept him rooted to the spot. He slowly approached the chair, his flashlight shaking in his hand. As he got closer, he noticed that the chair seemed to be moving on its own as if someone, or something, was sitting in it. He shone his flashlight on the chair, and what he saw made his heart skip a beat. There was a tattered doll sitting in the rocking chair, its eyes wide open, staring directly at him. Its face was cracked and disfigured, and it seemed to be emitting the eerie lullaby that had led him to the cabin. Mark's fear intensified, and he turned to leave the cabin, but the door slammed shut on its own, trapping him inside. He tried to force the door open, but it wouldn't budge. Panic set in as he realized he was trapped in the cabin with the haunted doll. He heard the lullaby growing louder and faster, and the doll's eyes seemed to follow his every move. Mark's heart raced as he looked around for another way out. He spotted a trapdoor in the floor, and without thinking, he pulled it open and climbed down into the darkness below. The basement was damp and musty, with a faint odor of decay. Mark's flashlight flickered, casting eerie shadows on the walls as he made his way through the darkness. He heard faint whispers and felt a cold breeze, but he couldn't see anyone or anything. As he reached the end of the basement, he saw a door with strange symbols carved into it. The lullaby was coming from behind the door, and Mark's curiosity got the better of him once again. He pushed open the door, and what he saw sent chills down his spine. In the middle of the room was a circle of candles, casting a dim, flickering light. At the center of the circle was a decrepit old woman with long, matted hair, rocking back and forth, singing the lullaby. Her eyes were milky white, and her skin was pale and wrinkled. Mark tried to back away, but the woman spotted him and stopped singing. She turned to him with a sinister smile, revealing sharp, yellow teeth. "Welcome," she said in a raspy voice. "I've been expecting you." Mark's heart pounded in his chest as he tried to find a way out, but the door slammed shut behind him, trapping him in the room with the woman. She approached him slowly, her body contorted and twisted. She told Mark that she had been trapped in the cabin for years, cursed by a dark force that had taken control of the woods. She had been trying to lure someone to break the curse and set her free, and Mark had fallen into her trap. Mark tried to reason with the woman, but she left manically, her voice echoing through the room. She lunged at him with a natural speed, her nails elongating into sharp claws. Mark dodged her, but she kept coming, her eyes filled with madness. He desperately searched for a way to break the curse and escape the room. He noticed a book on a pedestal in the corner of the room, covered in dust and cobwebs. He approached it cautiously, and as he opened it, he realized it was a journal written by the woman herself. In the journal, the woman described how she had been a caretaker of the woods long ago, until she had stumbled upon an ancient ritual that promised immortality. She had been lured by the dark force that resided in the woods and had performed the ritual, but it had gone horribly wrong. The dark force had cursed her, trapping her in the cabin and driving her mad. Mark realized that he had turned to the curse to free the woman and himself. He frantically searched the journal for clues and found a ritual that could break the curse. It involved reciting an incantation and lighting specific candles in a specific sequence. With trembling hands, Mark followed the instructions, reciting the incantation and lighting the candles. The room filled with an otherworldly energy, and the woman's screams grew louder. Mark's heart pounded as he completed the ritual, hoping it would work. Suddenly, the cabin shook violently, and the woman's screams turned into guttural cries. The candles flickered, and the air crackled with dark energy. Mark held his breath, waiting to see what would happen. In a blinding flash of light, the curse was broken. The woman's body disintegrated into dust, and the cabin fell silent. Mark let out a sigh of relief, but his relief was short-lived. The dark force that had cursed the woman was not gone. It had been awakened by the ritual, and it was now unleashed upon Mark. He heard whispers all around him, and the walls of the cabin seemed to close in on him. In a desperate attempt to escape, Mark ran towards the trapdoor he had entered through. He threw it open and climbed up, but the woods outside had changed. The once familiar paths were now twisted and distorted, and the trees seemed to reach out towards him with gnarled branches. Mark stumbled through the woods, his flashlight flickering as the dark force pursued him. He could feel its presence closing in, and his breath came in ragged gasps. He tripped and fell, but he quickly got back up and kept running, driven by sheer adrenaline. Finally, Mark saw a faint glimmer of light in the distance. He followed it, hoping it would lead him to safety. As he got closer, he realized it was a clearing with a small campfire. He stumbled into the clearing, and the campers who were sitting around the fire tent to look at him. Mark tried to warn them about the dark force, but before he could speak, he felt a searing pain in his chest. He looked down to see blood soaking his shirt, and he realized he had been stabbed by an unseen force. The campers screamed as Mark collapsed to the ground, his vision fading. The last thing he heard was the dark force's maniacal laughter echoing through the woods. Days later, a search party found Mark's lifeless body in the same clearing. His eyes were wide open in a frozen expression of terror, and his body was covered in scratches and bruises. The cabin in the woods was nowhere to be found, as if it had vanished into thin air. Rumors spread about the haunted woods and the cursed cabin, and no one dared to venture near them again. The dark force that had been unleashed by the failed ritual continued to haunt the woods, luring unsuspecting souls who dared to enter. Some claimed to hear the woman's screams echoing through the trees at night, while others reported seeing strange shadows moving in the darkness. Mark's YouTube channel remained untouched, with his last video capturing the eerie events in the cabin garnering millions of views. Viewers debated whether it was a hoax or a genuine paranormal encounter, but those who had experienced similar encounters in the woods believed it to be true. As time passed, the story of the Lost in the Woods became a legendary tale of horror, spreading far and wide. Many attempted to locate the cabin and break the curse, but all efforts were in vain. The dark force remained, hungering for more victims, and the cabin remained elusive, appearing only to those who were destined to fall under its curse. Some claimed to have seen Mark's ghost wandering the woods, forever trapped in the curse that he had unwittingly unleashed. Others reported hearing the woman's voice whispering in the wind, warning them to stay away from the cabin and the cursed woods. Mark's YouTube channel was eventually taken down, as his friends and family couldn't bear to keep it active after his tragic demise. But the legend of the Lost in the Woods continued to captivate and terrify those who heard it, a cautionary tale of the dangers that lurk in the shadows of the unknown. And so, the story of the Lost in the Woods remained a chilling reminder that some mysteries are best left unsolved, and that venturing into the darkness without caution can have dire consequences. Mark's tragic fate served as a grim reminder to all who dared to seek out the truth in the haunted woods, a warning that echoed through the ages, leaving a lasting legacy of fear and mystery. As the years passed, the woods surrounding the cabin grew denser and darker, and the stories of strange occurrences and disappearances continued to spread. Many believed that the dark force had grown stronger, feeding on the fear and despair of those who dared to enter the woods. The legend of the Lost in the Woods lived on, becoming a cautionary tale for generations to come. The cabin remained hidden, its secrets locked away from the world, and the dark force that had cursed the woman continued to taunt the woods, its hunger never satisfied. And so, the tale of the Lost in the Woods remained a haunting mystery, a story that sent shivers down the spine and kept people from venturing too far into the unknown. For Mark, it was a tragic ending to his search for the truth, a lesson learned too late. But for those who heard his story, it was a chilling reminder of the horrors that lurk in the depths of the forest, waiting for the next unsuspecting soul to stumble upon its cursed path.